One of the things with acceptance is not so much kind of like diffusion. It's not a difficult concept. The hard thing is often helping clients and inviting them to the process of actually being willing to see this as something viable and useful for them. One of the biggest challenges is that a lot of clients come in with an experiential avoidance agenda. They come in saying, I want to feel better, or I want to feel less bad. And that's, this is going to be what we start talking about when we talk about experiential avoidance. So let's define this concept of experiential avoidance to start with. What is experiential avoidance? I want to just look at this picture. I think it captures it pretty well. This kind of, what is this thing, as a concept? To kind of explain experiential avoidance, let's go back to the ACT matrix for a second. And you'll remember that there's two basic ways that we live, two basic behavioral orientations, to use some technical terminology. We are either moving towards or away. You might remember that. And we tend to move towards what we see as good. I'm just going to shrink myself down so I'm not in the way here. We tend to move towards what is good, and we tend to move away from, you could say, what we see as bad. So we move towards something good, like a food, and we move away from something bad, like something threatening. So this is kind of going back to that ACT matrix on one of our early weeks. Now, also in the ACT matrix, you'll remember that there are two ways of experiencing life. This is our vertical line. We can experience life and experience reality in an external way, or we can experience it internally. We can have an internal experience of life or an external experience of life. Now, I want to bring this part into the horizontal line here to show something. So what we see is that the two orientations of behavior, the two ways that we are basically acting, right? We are either moving towards what we want, away from what we don't want. That concept of towards what we want could be seen two ways. It could be towards what we want, which is, the good things, right? And good could be kind of, in the external world. It could be a five senses thing, right? For the top of if you remember the vertical line that we just looked at, good could be represented in that sense, like what we just had, a piece of cake or something that will be, sensorily good in that way. But what we can also see is because we've got that internal orientation or that internal way of experiencing reality, good can also exist there. And what does that look like? Well, we tend to want to move towards what feels good, what helps us feel things that we like happiness or excitement or, joy. All these things are kind of, feelings that we want to move towards. And on the away side, if we're moving towards good, what do you think we're trying to move away from? Well, we could probably say we're moving away from what we see as bad. And what we see as bad can exist in the world, in the five senses experience, like, things that are literally going to be threatening to us, like a crocodile, a snake, a bus. But we also tend to then want to move away from what is bad in our internal experience, difficult emotions, sadness, anxiety, the list can go on: anger, frustration, doubt, hopelessness, despair, confusion, uncertainty, the list goes on. And so we want to move away not only from what is bad that we see in the external world, but what is bad that we see in the internal world. And when we look at this part right here, this running away or trying to escape or solve or resolve or get rid of painful emotions is what experiential avoidance is. I hope this definition makes sense. I could have just said it in one sentence, but I wanted to take you on this journey through the ACT matrix to kind of highlight how experiential avoidance just makes sense based on our natural orientations towards and away from what is good and what is bad. So in a way, what we can see is that experiential avoidance is trying to move away from the feelings that we don't like. Experiential avoidance, a behavioral orientation where one's actions are targeted towards moving away or targeted at moving away from, in other words, relieving, escaping, or otherwise reducing our difficult or painful internal experiences.